Hello everyone and welcome back to the gaming news. Man, we've got so much to talk about. We've got Epic Games doing a lot and saying even more. We've got Valve announcing a major revamp of the Steam store and far more past that. And then to recap the latest in this channel, Division 2 video yesterday sadly got nuked by YouTube not properly sending it to subs. Thanks YouTube. And also the Stadia feature and Outer Worlds situation. So that's what's up. Past that, let's get into the news. First up, we've got Steam news, as they have announced a bunch of new features, including a library redesign. So your library is now going to have its own homepage. This is going to allow you to feature games and also have your top games be listed there. Overall, it should make it a bit easier to quickly access the games that you care about, but it's fair to say that layout-wise, it's not massively space efficient. Now, the new library also highlights games your friends are playing, and it also highlights ones that have recently been updated, which is a pretty lovely feature. Past that, each game's page has been overhauled, presenting you with an activity feed, a quick view of your stats, recent events, and more. And then they're also bringing in a new feature called Steam Events. So this is a feature that has been designed to help developers communicate when something interesting is happening with their game. So, for an example, an in-game event, a double XP weekend, something like that. Events are going to be strongly highlighted throughout Steam, it seems, and there is support for an array of notifications through things like email, the Steam app, and more. Overall, I think it's a pretty great idea. It gives devs another tool to drum up excitement for their game, and just a way to communicate with the game's broader audience. And that's something that's really important and has traditionally been hard because normally only your most core dedicated fans actually follow your social media. Next though, the Epic Store. Oh boy, here we go. First, there's something I really want to talk about here with Epic Store coverage. And look, I am going to cover it from all angles. It's what I do. It would be really easy for me to just say the popular things and to cut the rest out in the edit. Many, I think, kind of do that, but I don't think it gives an accurate portrayal of reality. I think it is kind of just profiteering by catering to people's existing biases. I think we're all better than that. I think we're all able to harbor a multi-dimensional viewpoint on all this stuff. So with that in mind, we're going to talk about the multitude of Epic Store related things that have came out. We don't want to do that ever again. We never want to do it again in this way. Those are two quotes from Epic Store representatives during a GDC panel talking about the Metro Exodus situation, with them saying that they do not want any developer to have to go through what 4A went through. Of course, that's referencing the extreme backlash that the studio received because of the Epic situation. Now that is kind of good-ish news. Epic have somewhat drawn a line here, saying that they are not going to do that so close to launch. Now that is good, but it's worth noting that they're obviously happy to snap up titles that previously have been announced to be on Steam, like The Outer Worlds and Phoenix Point. I mean, that Outer Worlds trailer, it says Steam on it. Now, I guess, of course, before the Epic Store came along, announcing that your game was coming out on Steam was, default, assuming it wasn't, say, an EA title, so every game in development would have fallen into that, but still, that's sort of good to hear, but there are clearly still exclusives on the way, but we actually now know that might not be forever. Epic have said that they are not planning to push hard with exclusives forever. They said that they might end up doing 0 or might end up doing a tiny number of major ones per year. Now, if the latter point means that they're funding new projects as an exclusive, that could be cool. It could result in games being made that otherwise would not be. They really did make it clear that they are doing this to push their business model, trying to make 8812 industry standard. Now look, that's fine for them to say, and I'm sure a sliver of it is true. And look, as with almost every industry, the less money to the middlemen, the better. But in reality, come on, they're doing it for market share. That's what they're doing. They just want that market share, obviously. Exclusives and the 88-12 split, they're just tools. They're ways to get market share. I think it would be naive to say that they're purely doing this out of the good of their heart to normalize 88-12. Now that said, 88-12, I think that's something we can all agree is a good thing. It puts more money in the hands of developers, and that's a good thing, especially for indies and AA. We are in a world where a game that is delivered on time and on budget can still put extreme financial stress on a company. Now look, having met publishers and been in meetings myself with publishers one-on-one, and having friends who have published games, I know a lot more about how the financial situation of the indie game publishing scene works. So as an example, if you have a project with a lowish budget of 200k that's entirely funded by a publisher, you might have a 60-40 revenue split with that publisher, with them getting 60 until their investment is recouped. And then that would flip, with the dev getting 60% of sales and the publisher getting 30. So hitting that early threshold to flip the rev share as early as possible is super important to developers and being in a good financial state. And look, I've actually had publishers say to me that they would rather I pitch them a monthly burn rate for my company that actually earns me profit on the development process. And that's down to them wanting the company to exist after the game is delivered on time and on budget, because that historically has been a major issue for indie companies and how they finance themselves. So basically, if an 8812 model becomes the norm across all storefronts, and I hope something like that happens, then those problems for indie devs will be reduced. Now, look, 8812, is that too good? Is it mad? Surely there's a reason Valve are giving 30 or taking 30%. Well, according to Tim Sweeney, they spend 2 to 3.5% on payment processing, 1% on CDN bandwidth, and 1% on customer service. So 5.5% out of their 12, meaning that 6.5% out of their 12 is profit. Now look, 30% may have made sense for Valve a decade and a bit ago when it was all more expensive, but now it's not like that. And Valve and Epic probably have pretty similar costs. So 8812 has the middleman, Epic in this case, getting a fair amount based on what they provide. Just over 50% of their cut is profit. With 70/30, that's 5.5% of the 30 being cost and 24.5 being profit. I think we can all agree we would rather that money went to the people who actually made the games. I think that's pretty reasonable, and that's why I do support an 8812 model and do want that. And that's partially why I'm pissed at Epic. In being so pig-headed and so aggressive, they have managed to set consumers against something that is good for them. Simply put, it's extremely frustrating to see a good thing be poisoned by a company trying to make it happen in this manner. So to be 100% clear with you here, that's my thoughts on 8812, that's why I want it, and that's why I am angry at Epic. I know I'm saying a lot of things that are pro 8812, that doesn't mean I'm happy with what Epic is doing, because I am not, I do not like it. Now, moving on, Epic CEO Tim Sweeney did say that Epic would be more selective with the games that they put on their store, saying that they are, quote, not in the prawn business. He didn't say prawn, but you get the point. He said they want to prioritize high-quality experiences, and they will turn down, quote, crappy games from their store. And I think they're firing a few shots there at Valve, aren't they? They essentially want to be what Steam was back when Valve were more hands-on. You see, it used to be that being on Steam was not a given, and being included on that storefront would lead to just a higher chance of success with more visibility and more purchases, all because Steam was massive, but the barrier to entry meant that being on Steam had customers thinking, that's probably a good game. Now, the modern state of Steam is a bit more tricky. You see, back in the day, you would have had to have gone to business events within GDC and Gamescom. It's kind of the bit that, I mean, you don't really hear about outside of the business, or maybe specific events like Games Connection. All of that so you could try to get a publisher who could get you on Steam. That's not really needed as much anymore, and that opens the way for more solo devs to find success on Steam. But it also opens Steam up to just anything being just yoked on the store. Now, Epic might represent a return to that old model, and that would kind of favor indies who work within the traditional system. Now, I don't think it would hold them back too much. Whether your game's $250K budget comes from a publisher or from a Kickstarter, well, chances are both are, notable enough things to get you on the Epic store, assuming the core product is there. And, I mean, $250K might seem like a lot of money, but if that's, 5 people, 2 years, plus business overheads and expenses, you'd be shocked how quickly that goes. So yeah, even though Epic seemed to want to be what Valve used to be, Tim's words absolutely were a shot at Valve, which I think is partially fair. The Steam store can be a bit messy. Now, for those wondering how well Epic's efforts have actually performed for them, well, they shared stats. They have 85 million users on their store, of course with much of that being driven by Fortnite. Valve had 90 million active users in January, but there is a key difference here. Epic said that more Epic PC users play console regularly than Steam, and that 40% don't have Steam, that 58% don't use Steam regularly. Now that's actually a really interesting one. It reflects how Epic are capturing a far more broad market that's kind of aside from the core PC one. Perhaps it's showing why they're trying to break into that core PC market so aggressively with their exclusives and why that's been met with pushback. Personally, though, I've not played a game on Steam in a month or two, I'd say. Now, that's down to me playing The Division and Anthem for review, getting stuck back into Destiny, of course, which is on Battle.net, and then World of Warcraft for my other channel, plus a big relapse into the competitive side of StarCraft 2, which again is on Battle.net. So I think that Epic's number is less a reflection of their store, and I think that's more a reflection of how just games are spread across more platforms now than ever, and that obviously is something that's a pain in the ass for all of us to deal with. It really is. Overall, though, from these numbers, it seems like Epic are doing decently enough. I mean, they're driving new players over to the PC platform, of course, because of their deep market penetration on console and mobile, and that could be a good thing. I think more people on, the best platform in the universe would be nice, especially when the current day consoles are really struggling to compete with PC in terms of, graphics and even basic gameplay and holding 30 FPS. So we can see that some of Epic's plans are working here, and now I think what we need to just wait and see is how much of the growth will end up coming from the core PC gaming audience. Of course, many of them are not happy, but that clearly, as an example, didn't affect the Metro Exodus sales that much, which is very interesting, kind of gives you a bit of a thought about the effectiveness of boycotts, but I think that is more of a topic for later. Those updates that they want to bring in, I think they are a good thing, but it's business model, especially for indies, that they need to innovate on. Valve, do 8515. Sure, it's not 8812, but guess what? It's close enough that a lot of people will think, well, you know what? I could get this Epic exclusivity deal and have a million pitchforks, or I could just go on all platforms with a 15% cut going to the platform. I think 8515 would be a great place for us to end up. Of course, 8812 for Epic, and I believe 9010 for Discord. And then the final bit of news is that Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has been announced. It's not by the, original studio, but they seem to have the right idea. Of course, people are extremely excited about this. The first game was a much-loved title, in spite of it being a bit rough around the edges. Of course, I think many people know about that game, at least for me, because they watched Total Biscuit back in the day. He knew it, and that kind of really helped to spread the game, I think. So it's certainly good to see that this is happening. The game is set to launch in 2020, and it's going to be available on the Epic Store and Steam. Yes, this is an example of a future that I think we all want. A major game coming out on many stores. It's out in GOG, Paradox's store, Epic's store, Steam's store. Hopefully we end up in a time where all stores have innovated on their revenue split, making it more dev-friendly, and we end up in a situation where the customer has choice, which is extremely important, and that is the core issue that we face right now. Next up, let's talk about Star Wars, because a rather strange story hit the news, and it's an example of gaming news website bloggers hitting the post button just a little bit too fast. It was reported that a number of Lucasfilm roles appeared on Disney's job site, with the descriptions referencing interactive media, leading to rampant speculation that LucasArts Games is a thing that's being resurrected, and a lot of hype. Of course, that tied beautifully into EA's mishandling of the Star Wars franchise, being particularly spicy because Disney had gone on record saying they were happy with EA's performance, so really it made for a heck of a story. Well, it actually turns out it really amounts to nothing, and that the Lucasfilm's games label brand is not being brought back in the way that many hoped. Disney reached out, saying that the roles do not indicate a brand revival, but are there for a segment of an existing business that coincidentally shares the name, making it clear to Gamasutra that they are continuing their strategy of licensing the Star Wars IP to EA and Zynga. So yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. Basically, this got a lot of headlines, but it's not news because nothing's happening, and that's the risk of jumping the gun without hunting down sources to confirm one's suspicions and get a bit more background. Next up, quickfire news. Apex Legends brought in $92 million in February. Now, given how it ended that month with probably just under 50 million players, that means it generated just under $2 per player, though of course not with an even distribution. Now, here's some fun numbers. To put this in perspective, during, I believe, Q1 of the year of Mass Effect Andromeda's release for EA, net revenue for console and PC downloads was 111 million, mostly because of Mass Effect Andromeda. So yeah, Apex Legends nearly hit that number itself in its first month, and will continue to be a strong revenue generator for years to come. And also, that month didn't cover the Battle Pass, which will mean that its second month will probably generate significantly more revenue. And yeah, if you want to know why publishers are chasing the Battle Royale trend, man, that's why, right? Now, still, Apex is a fantastically designed game at its core. It's beautiful. So I do think that most of this happened because it's a top-notch game by a top-notch dev. I don't think it just happened because, the publisher put out a Battle Royale and therefore it won by default. The Battle Royale graveyard is fairly massive, but in this case, it was a great game by a great dev that happened to have strong publisher resources behind it to mean that it would just get that deep market penetration, with its meteoric growth being something that we've covered on this channel before. It's a very interesting situation, and I mean, as somebody who primarily does prefer single-player, narrative-driven games like what I wish Mass Effect Andromeda was, it's a little bit sad, isn't it? I mean, it's great that people are happy that they're enjoying that game, but if I'm selfish for a minute, it's like, I'd rather more Mass Effects, please. But then when you look at the numbers, you can kind of think, well, it's hard for the guys in the business suits to decide that there should be another Mass Effect when Apex Legends makes 92 million in its first month from selling skins. Man, it's a wild world, isn't it? So, that is the gaming news recap for now. Of course, the Division 2 video hit yesterday. 2 videos the day before that. So much going on this channel and much more to come. I mean, come on, Sekiro, we've got to play that, right? Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what you think down below. And with that, I'll see you next time.